The bass thrummed through my chest as I leaned against the bar, watching Caleb nurse his beer in the corner booth like some kind of social ghost. God, when did my husband become so pathetic? Here we were at Mercury Club, the hottest spot downtown, and he looked like he'd rather be debugging code at home. Ianthe, you're glowing tonight. Rafa appeared beside me, his cologne mixing with the scent of expensive whiskey. At 30, he had that dangerous charm that made women forget they were married. Event promoter, smooth talker, everything Caleb wasn't. Thanks, Rafa. Someone appreciates when I make an effort. I shot a pointed look toward my husband's table. Caleb didn't even glance up from his phone. Dance with me, Rafa whispered, his hand finding the small of my back. Show these people what real chemistry looks like. I should have said no. Should have walked back to Caleb, tried to include him in the conversation. Instead, I let Rafa lead me onto the dance floor, where the lights painted everything in shades of rebellion. The music pounded as Rafa's hand settled on my waist, pulling me closer than appropriate for a married woman. But God, it felt good to be wanted, to be seen. When was the last time Caleb looked at me like I was desirable instead of just another household expense? Your husband doesn't know what he's got, Rafa murmured against my ear, his breath hot and intoxicating. I threw my head back and laughed, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Caleb, please, he's too busy with his spreadsheets to notice if I disappeared for a week. My phone buzzed with notifications as friends started recording our dance. Perfect. Let everyone see what I was capable of when I wasn't being ignored at home. Post that video, Jessica, I called out to my friend, spinning dramatically in Rafa's arms. Caption it, still got it at 32. Through the crowd, I caught sight of Caleb. He was watching now, his expression unreadable in the shifting lights. For a moment, I expected him to storm over, to finally show some passion, some jealousy. Instead, he simply observed, like he was taking mental notes. That should have been my first warning. He's not even going to fight for you, Rafa observed, following my gaze. What kind of man lets his wife dance with another guy? The boring kind, I replied, pressing closer to Rafa's chest. The kind who thinks marriage means giving up on life. The song ended, but I didn't step away immediately. Let Caleb see what he was missing. Let everyone see that Ianthe Voss wasn't some suburban housewife who'd given up on excitement. When I finally returned to our table, Caleb was finishing his beer with mechanical precision. Ready to go? He asked, his tone neutral as Switzerland. Already? The night's just getting started. I have work tomorrow. He stood, leaving cash on the table. You can stay if you want. I'll call you an Uber. The dismissal stung more than any argument would have. Fine, I'll get a ride with Rafa. Caleb nodded once, like I'd just confirmed something he already knew. See you at home. He walked away without looking back, leaving me standing there with my victory feeling suddenly hollow. Around me, friends exchanged glances, and I realized how this looked. The abandoned wife, publicly dismissed by her own husband. Forget him, Rafa said, appearing with fresh drinks. His loss is my gain. I posted the dancing video myself that night, adding heart emojis and tagging the location. Within minutes, likes and comments poured in. You look amazing. Living your best life. Where's your husband? That last comment made me pause, but only for a moment. I was tired of being invisible, tired of being taken for granted. If Caleb couldn't appreciate what he had, maybe it was time to remind him what he could lose. When I finally made it home at 2 a.m., Caleb was already asleep, or pretending to be. His breathing was too controlled, too even, but he didn't say anything when I stumbled into the bathroom, didn't ask where I'd been or who I'd been with. The next morning, I woke to an empty bed and the smell of coffee brewing. Caleb was already dressed for work, moving through his routine with the same methodical precision he brought to everything. Coffee's ready, he said without looking at me. I'll be late tonight. System upgrade. Caleb, about last night. What about it? His tone was conversational, almost friendly. You had fun. That's what matters. The casual acceptance felt worse than anger would have. I wanted to explain, to justify, but he was already gathering his laptop bag and keys. We should talk, I tried again. About what? You dancing, you posting videos. You're an adult, Ianthe. You can make your own choices. He kissed my forehead, the same perfunctory gesture he'd been giving me for months, and headed for the door. I'll see you tonight. Have a good day. The door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone with my coffee and the growing certainty that something had fundamentally shifted. I checked my phone. The video had over 200 likes now, and Rafa had commented with fire emojis. But for the first time since last night, the validation felt empty. The apartment felt different over the next few weeks, like the air itself had thickened with unspoken words. Caleb maintained his routine with clockwork precision. Coffee at 6:30, work by 8, home by 6:15, dinner, television, bed by 10:30. But something had changed in the spaces between. He was polite, devastatingly, coldly polite. Good morning, Ianthe. Sleep well? The grocery list is on the counter. I added those crackers you like. How was your day? That's nice. It was like living with a courteous stranger who happened to share my last name. I tried to break through the wall he'd built. I cooked his favorite meals, wore the dress he'd once said made me look stunning, even suggested we watch that action movie series he loved. But Caleb received each gesture with the same pleasant acknowledgement he might give a helpful coworker. That's thoughtful, thank you. You look nice today. Sure, we can watch whatever you prefer. The worst part was that I couldn't even accuse him of being mean. He was perfectly reasonable, perfectly civil, perfectly absent while being physically present. Meanwhile, Rafa kept texting. Thinking about our dance last night, when can I see you again? Your husband doesn't deserve you, you know that, right? Meet me for lunch. I know this place downtown. I found myself responding more and more, drawn to his attention like a plant turning toward sunlight. At least someone found me interesting enough to pursue. 3 weeks after the club incident, I was folding laundry when I noticed Caleb's home office door was closed. He usually left it open, but lately, he'd been spending more time in there after dinner. What are you working on? I asked when he emerged for water. Just organizing some files. Nothing exciting. But I'd glimpsed something on his desk, a yellow legal pad covered in his neat handwriting, dates and times listed in columns. My name appeared several times. Are you keeping some kind of list about me? Caleb paused, water glass halfway to his lips. I like to keep track of things. You know how I am with documentation. Documentation of what, exactly? Household schedules, appointments, that sort of thing. His tone remained maddeningly neutral. Why? I wanted to push, to demand answers, but something in his expression stopped me. There was a stillness there, a watchfulness that reminded me of how he'd observed me at the club. Just curious, I said instead. That night, after Caleb fell asleep, I tried to sneak into his office. The door was locked. In 8 years of marriage, he'd never locked that door. The next day at work, I vented to my colleague Jessica about Caleb's weird behavior. He's being so cold, I complained over coffee in the break room. Like, I get that he was upset about the dancing thing, but seriously, we're adults, I can have friends. Maybe he's just processing, Jessica suggested diplomatically. Processing what? I danced with someone. Big deal. It's not like I'm having an affair. Yet, I added silently. But even as I said it, I knew I was walking a line. The texts with Rafa were getting more frequent, more intimate. He'd started calling me during lunch breaks, his voice warm and attentive in ways Caleb's hadn't been for months. Your husband is an idiot, Rafa told me during one of these calls. If you were mine, I'd never let you feel ignored. Maybe he just doesn't care anymore, I replied, glancing around the empty conference room I'd ducked into for privacy. Then why are you staying? Life's too short to be miserable, Ianthe. Why was I staying? The question followed me home, where Caleb was cooking dinner with the same mechanical efficiency he brought to everything else. "How was work?" he asked, not looking up from the stir-fry. "Fine, busy." I watched him move around the kitchen, noting how he avoided unnecessary contact, how he handed me plates without letting our fingers brush. "Caleb, are we okay?" "Of course. Why wouldn't we be?" "You seem distant lately." He finally looked at me, and for a moment I saw something flicker in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "I'm just focused on work. Big project coming up." He turned back to the stove. "Dinner's almost ready." That weekend, Lydia called to invite us to Sunday brunch. Caleb's sister had always been polite to me, but I sensed she'd never fully approved of our marriage. She was one of those women who seemed to see right through people's bullshit, which made me uncomfortable. "We'll be there," Caleb said when I told him about the invitation. "Actually, I might have plans with Jessica," I lied. I'd been thinking about meeting Rafa for drinks. "Cancel them," Caleb said quietly. "Family is important." Something in his tone made it sound less like a request and more like a test. I found myself agreeing, though I resented the presumption. Sunday brunch at Café Luna was awkward from the start. Lydia kept giving me searching looks while making small talk about her teaching job. Elena, Caleb's mother, was more direct in her disapproval, though she tried to hide it behind polite inquiries about my work. "How are things at the HR department?" Elena asked, cutting her eggs with surgical precision. "Good. Busy season with all the new hires." "That's nice. Keeping busy is important." She glanced at Caleb, who was methodically working through his pancakes. "Caleb's been working so hard lately. All those late nights organizing files." I caught the emphasis on organizing files and felt a chill. "Yes, he's very thorough," I managed. "Thoroughness is a virtue," Lydia added, her teacher voice making the words sound like a lesson, especially when documenting important events. The conversation felt loaded with subtext I couldn't quite grasp. Caleb remained quiet throughout, answering direct questions, but not volunteering much else. As we were leaving, Lydia pulled me aside while Caleb helped Elena to her car. "Ianthe, I don't know what's going on between you two, but Caleb is my little brother. He's a good man, and he deserves better than whatever game you're playing." "I'm not playing any game." "That video from the club is still making rounds on social media," she interrupted. "People talk, and right now, they're talking about how Caleb Voss's wife was grinding on some guy while he sat alone at a table." Heat flooded my cheeks. "It was just dancing." "Was it?" Lydia's expression was stern but not unkind. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to humiliate him. And if that's the case, you should know that Caleb might seem quiet, but he's not weak. Push him too far, and you might not like what happens." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you. There's a difference." That night, I confronted Caleb about his family's attitude. "Your sister basically accused me of trying to humiliate you today." "Did she?" He was reading on his tablet, not looking up. "Yes, she did. And your mother was making weird comments about your file organizing." "What's that about?" "I told you, I'm just keeping better track of things. Household management, schedules, finances. It's good to have documentation." "Documentation for what?" Finally, he looked at me, and his expression was completely calm. "For whatever might come up in the future. You never know when you might need records of things." The word sent a chill down my spine, though I couldn't say exactly why. "That sounds ominous." "Does it? I think it sounds practical." He returned to his reading. "I'm going to bed soon. Early morning tomorrow." As he headed toward the bathroom, I noticed he took his phone with him, something he'd never done before. When he came back, he plugged it into a charger on his nightstand instead of leaving it in the kitchen like usual. Small changes, but they felt significant in ways I couldn't articulate. That night, as Caleb slept beside me with that same controlled breathing, I stared at the ceiling and wondered when my marriage had become a chess game where I didn't know the rules. The gossip started small, like it always does. A whispered conversation that stopped when I walked into the break room. Colleagues who suddenly found their phones very interesting when I approached their desks. I might have ignored it if not for the email from HR requesting a meeting. "Ianthe, please have a seat," Director Patricia Williams said, her expression professionally neutral. "This is a bit awkward, but we've received some concerns about social media activity that might reflect poorly on the company." My stomach dropped. What kind of concerns? "Videos from a few weeks ago, posted on your personal accounts, but with location tags that connect to some of our clients. The Mercury Club event was a networking mixer for several companies we work with." She turned her laptop screen toward me. There I was, dancing with Rafa, laughing and spinning while Caleb sat alone in the background. The optics were worse than I remembered. "I understand this was your personal time," Patricia continued, "but when clients start asking questions about employee conduct, it becomes a workplace issue. I need you to be more mindful of how your online presence might impact professional relationships." Heat flooded my face. This is ridiculous. I was dancing at a club, not committing a crime. I agree it seems minor, but perception matters in HR. We deal with sensitive employee issues, and our reputation for discretion is crucial. I'm not disciplining you, just asking for better judgment going forward. The meeting lasted 10 more excruciating minutes. As I walked back to my desk, I felt eyes following me, heard the subtle shift in conversations as I passed. By lunch, I was certain everyone knew about my meeting with Patricia. Jessica found me hiding in the parking lot during my break. "Hey, you okay? People are saying you got called into HR." "Word travels fast," I said bitterly. "What happened?" I explained about the video and the client concerns, watching Jessica's expression grow increasingly uncomfortable. "Ianthe, I have to ask, are you having an affair?" "What? No." The lie came automatically, though my phone buzzed with another text from Rafa even as I said it. "Because people are starting to wonder. And that video, plus your husband sitting there looking miserable, it doesn't look great. Since when do I need to worry about how my marriage looks to coworkers?" "Since your marriage drama started affecting your professional reputation," Jessica said gently. "Look, I'm your friend, but you asked me to post that video. You wanted people to see it. Now they have, and they're drawing conclusions." That evening, I met my mother for coffee at our usual spot downtown. Marta Gray had always been my ally, the one person who consistently took my side in any conflict. "Mum, I'm having the worst week," I began, launching into the story of the HR meeting and the workplace gossip. "Oh, honey," she said, stirring sugar into her latte. "People love to tear down a woman who's having fun. You did nothing wrong." "Thank you. Finally, someone with sense. Although," she paused, "maybe you could tone it down a little. Just until things blow over?" "Tone what down? I danced with a friend, that's it." "I know, sweetheart, but appearances matter. And Caleb is such a nice man. You don't want to hurt his feelings unnecessarily." Even my mother was taking his side now. The unfairness of it made my chest tight with frustration. What about my feelings? What about the fact that my husband has been treating me like a roommate for months? Have you tried talking to him about that? He won't talk. He just goes through the motions like we're business partners instead of married. Men process things differently, Mom said diplomatically. Maybe give him some time to work through whatever he's feeling. But I was tired of giving Caleb time. Tired of being patient while he turned our home into an emotional wasteland. That's why, when Rafa texted asking to meet for drinks, I said yes. We met at a wine bar across town, somewhere I was unlikely to run into anyone I knew. Rafa looked good. He always looked good, in dark jeans and a button-down that showed off his gym-toned shoulders. "You look stressed," he observed, signaling the bartender for another round. "Work drama, marriage drama, the usual." Tell me about the marriage drama. So I did. I told him about Caleb's coldness, about the locked office door, about feeling invisible in my own home. Rafa listened with the kind of focused attention I'd been craving for months. You deserve better than that, he said, his hand covering mine on the bar. A woman like you should be cherished, not ignored. The touch sent electricity up my arm. When was the last time someone had touched me with intention, with desire? I keep thinking maybe I should try harder to fix things, I admitted. Why? You're not the one who checked out of the marriage. You're still fighting for it. Am I? Sometimes I feel like I'm just making everything worse. By living your life, by refusing to disappear just because your husband wants you to. Rafa's thumb traced across my knuckles. Ianthe, you're vibrant and beautiful and alive. Don't let anyone dim that light. I wanted to believe him, needed to believe him, when he suggested we go somewhere more private. I hesitated for exactly 3 seconds before nodding. His apartment was modern and masculine, all clean lines and expensive electronics. We barely made it through the door before he was kissing me, his hands tangling in my hair, making me feel desired in ways I'd almost forgotten were possible. Afterward, lying in his bed while he traced patterns on my bare shoulder, I felt guilty and exhilarated in equal measure. This is crazy, I whispered. This is living, he corrected. This is what you deserve. I didn't get home until after midnight. Caleb was in bed, but again I sensed he wasn't really asleep. He didn't ask where I'd been, didn't comment on the fact that I'd clearly showered somewhere else before coming home. The next morning, he was already gone when I woke up. But there was a note on the kitchen counter in his precise handwriting. Ianthe, I'll be working late this week. System upgrades require evening hours. Don't wait up. C. Even his notes sounded like business correspondence now. At work, the whispers had evolved. Now people weren't just talking about the video. They were speculating about where I'd been the night before. Apparently, someone had seen me at the wine bar with Rafa. Ianthe, Patricia called me into her office again. We need to talk. This time, she didn't bother with pleasantries. I'm hearing rumors that you're involved with Rafa Moreno. He's a vendor for several of our clients, which creates a potential conflict of interest. My mouth went dry. I don't know what you've heard, but I'm not asking for details about your personal life. I'm telling you that if there's any truth to these rumors, you need to be extremely careful about how you handle professional interactions with his company. There's no conflict of interest, I said weakly. Good. Then there shouldn't be any problem maintaining appropriate boundaries going forward. As I left her office, I realized how quickly my life was spiraling beyond my control. The affair that had felt like reclaiming my power was becoming another cage, just with different bars. That night, I tried calling Caleb to see if he wanted to grab dinner together, maybe try to reconnect. It went straight to voicemail. Hi, it's me. I know you're busy with work stuff, but I thought maybe we could talk tonight. I miss you. The words surprised me as I said them, because I realized they were true. Somewhere beneath all the resentment and frustration, I did miss my husband. I missed the man who used to make me laugh, who used to look at me like I was the most interesting person in the room. But when I got home, the apartment was empty except for another note. Working until at least 11 p.m. Leftovers in the fridge. C. I ate reheated pasta alone while scrolling through social media, watching other people's highlight reels and wondering when my own life had become something I needed to escape from. Rafa texted around 9. Thinking about last night. When can I see you again? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Soon. Because if Caleb was going to treat me like a stranger, maybe it was time to act like one. The morning I discovered Caleb's files, I'd been looking for the warranty information on our coffee maker. He'd always been meticulous about keeping documents organized, so I figured I'd find it quickly in his home office filing cabinet. What I found instead changed everything. The filing cabinet was locked, which was new. But the desk drawer wasn't, and inside, I found copies of documents that made my blood run cold. Bank statements with highlighted entries showing cash withdrawals on dates I recognized, nights I'd been out with Rafa. Credit card statements with restaurant charges circled in red ink. Phone records with certain numbers marked in yellow highlighter. But it was the manila folder, labeled Incidents IV, that really stopped me cold. Inside were printouts of my social media posts, screenshots of text conversations, and that damn video from Mercury Club. But worse than that were the handwritten notes in Caleb's precise script. March 15th, subject returned home, 1:47 a.m., showered immediately. Clothes in hamper smelled of unfamiliar cologne. March 18th, subject claimed to be working late, but Jessica confirmed she left office at normal time. March 22nd, subject's phone buzzed repeatedly during dinner, declined to answer when asked who was texting. Subject: he was referring to me like I was some kind of research project. My hands shook as I flipped through pages of documentation spanning weeks. He'd been watching me, cataloguing my behavior, building some kind of case against me. The worst part was how accurate it all was. Every late night, every lie, every moment I'd thought I was being clever, he'd noticed and recorded it all. Find what you were looking for? I spun around to find Caleb standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He was supposed to be at work. I was looking for the coffee maker warranty, I stammered, trying to shove the papers back into the folder. Top drawer, left side, under appliances, he said calmly, stepping into the room. But that's not what you found, is it? Caleb, what is this? Why are you keeping files on me like I'm some kind of criminal? Documentation, he said, the same word he'd been using for weeks. Evidence of behavioral patterns and timeline inconsistencies. Evidence for what? He moved to his desk and calmly took the folder from my trembling hands, straightening the papers I'd disturbed. For whatever comes next, he said simply. Are you planning to divorce me? I'm planning to protect myself. The clinical way he said it was worse than if he'd screamed at me. This wasn't the emotional reaction of a betrayed husband. This was the methodical preparation of someone who'd already made his decision. Caleb, we need to talk about this, about everything. Do we? Because talking implies both parties are being honest, and we both know that's not the case here. Okay, fine. You want honesty? I've been seeing Rafa, but it's because you've been treating me like I don't exist for months. I know about Rafa. His tone didn't change. I've known for weeks. Then why didn't you say anything? Because I wanted to see how far you'd go, how many lies you'd tell, how thoroughly you'd document your own infidelity on social media. He opened another folder and showed me more screenshots, pictures Rafa and I had taken together, posts I'd liked on his Instagram, check-ins at restaurants where we'd met. You made it very easy to track, he observed, almost like you wanted to get caught. Maybe I had. Maybe some part of me had been hoping he'd fight for me, show some passion, prove he still cared enough to be jealous. So what now? I asked. You divorce me and use all this as ammunition. That depends on you. What do you mean? End it. Delete Rafa's number, block him on social media, and commit to working on our marriage. Do that, and these files go away. And if I don't, then I file for divorce and present evidence of adultery, which in this state affects alimony and asset division. The ultimatum hung in the air between us like a blade. I stared at my husband, really looked at him, and realized I was seeing him clearly for the first time in months. This wasn't the passive, withdrawn man I'd been living with. This was someone who'd been strategically gathering intelligence while I played games. You've been planning this for weeks, I said. I've been preparing for multiple contingencies. It's what I do. That's so cold, Caleb, so calculated. And having an affair while posting about it online isn't? He had a point, but I wasn't ready to concede it. I felt invisible in our marriage, ignored, like you didn't care if I lived or died. So you decided to cheat instead of having an adult conversation about it. I tried to talk to you. You shut down every attempt. When? When did you try to talk to me about feeling neglected in our marriage? I opened my mouth to respond and realized I couldn't think of a specific instance. I'd complained to friends, to my mother, to Rafa about Caleb's behavior, but had I actually sat him down and said the words directly? You should have known, I said weakly. I should have read your mind, guessed that you were unhappy enough to start an affair. The affair isn't the real problem. It's a symptom of the problem. No, Ianthe, the affair is the problem. Everything else is just excuses. He closed the folders and locked them in his filing cabinet, the sound of the metal drawer sliding shut feeling final. You have until Friday to decide what you want to do. End it with Rafa and commit to marriage counseling, or I file the papers Monday morning. And if I choose counseling, how do I know you won't hold this over my head forever? You don't. But that's the risk you took when you decided to step outside our marriage. That afternoon, I called in sick to work and drove around aimlessly, trying to process what had happened. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from Rafa, but I couldn't bring myself to read them. Eventually, I found myself at my mother's house, sobbing in her kitchen while she made tea and tried to make sense of my rambling explanation. So, Caleb knows about your friend? She asked carefully. He's been documenting everything, Mom. Like I'm some kind of suspect in a criminal case. Well, sweetheart, you did lie to him repeatedly. Whose side are you on? I'm on the side of my daughter having a stable marriage. Caleb is a good man, Ianthe. Maybe he went about this wrong, but can you blame him for protecting himself? Everyone keeps saying how good he is. What about me? What about what I need? What do you need that you can't get from your husband? The question stopped me short. What did I need? Attention, yes. Validation, excitement. But were those things worth destroying my marriage over? I don't know anymore, I admitted. Then maybe you should figure that out before you make any decisions you can't take back. That night, Caleb and I ate dinner in silence. He'd made my favorite pasta dish, which felt like either an olive branch or a cruel irony. When I tried to bring up our morning conversation, he simply said, "You have until Friday. There's nothing more to discuss until then." After dinner, he disappeared into his office again, and I heard the sound of the printer running for over an hour. More documentation, I assumed. More evidence being organized and filed away. I lay in bed that night, listening to him move around the apartment with his usual quiet efficiency, and for the first time in months, I tried to imagine what life would look like without him. The thought terrified me more than I expected. Thursday morning arrived with the weight of an execution date. I had less than 24 hours to make a decision that would determine the rest of my life, and I still didn't know what I was going to do. Rafa had been texting increasingly frantically since I'd started ignoring his messages. When he called during my lunch break, I finally answered. "Ianthe, what's going on? You've been radio silent for 2 days." "Caleb knows about us." Silence on the other end, then, "Shit, how much does he know?" "Everything. He's been documenting our relationship for weeks. Photos, texts, timelines, the works." "Okay, that's intense. What does he want?" "For me to end things with you and go to marriage counseling." Another pause. "And what do you want?" It was the question I'd been avoiding, but hearing Rafa ask it forced me to confront the truth I'd been dancing around. "I don't know." "Well, you need to figure it out fast. I'm not interested in being the other man in some drawn-out marriage drama." His words stung. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I signed up for fun with a woman who was done with her marriage, not couples therapy and custody battles. If you're going back to him, just tell me now." "It's not that simple." "Actually, it is. Either you want to be with me or you don't. Either your marriage is over or it isn't. But I'm not waiting around while you figure your shit out." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, realizing that Rafa, the man I'd risked everything for, was bailing at the first sign of real consequence. That evening, I found Caleb in his office, typing on his laptop with focused intensity. Legal documents were spread across his desk, and I caught glimpses of phrases like irreconcilable differences and division of assets. "Working on the divorce papers?" I asked from the doorway. "Preparing for multiple scenarios," he replied without looking up. "It's what I do." "Can we talk?" "We can talk tomorrow, after you've made your decision." "Caleb, please, I need you to understand why you what?" He finally looked at me, and his expression was tired rather than angry. "Why you decided our marriage wasn't worth fighting for. Why you chose to humiliate me publicly instead of talking to me privately. Why you lied to my face for weeks while posting evidence of your affair on social media." "I felt invisible," I said weakly. "So you've said. But feeling invisible doesn't justify betrayal, Ianthe. It justifies a conversation. It justifies marriage counseling. It justifies a lot of things, but not infidelity. What if I choose counseling? What if I end things with Rafa and we try to work this out? Then we try, but you need to understand that trust, once broken, doesn't magically repair itself. It would take years to rebuild what you've destroyed, assuming it's even possible. And you'd be willing to try? I'd be willing to try if I believed you were genuinely committed to our marriage and not just afraid of the financial consequences of divorce. The accuracy of his assessment hit like a physical blow. Was I motivated by love or by fear of losing the comfortable life I'd built? "How do I prove that to you?" "I don't know if you can, but ending the affair would be a start." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Caleb slept beside me with that same controlled breathing. In the morning, I'd have to choose between the life I'd built and the excitement I'd been chasing. By 3 a.m., I still didn't know what I was going to do. Friday morning came too soon. I woke to find Caleb already dressed and drinking coffee in the kitchen, his laptop bag packed and ready by the door. "I'll be home at 6, he said without preamble. "We can talk then." "Caleb, wait." But he was already gone, leaving me alone with the weight of my decision. I called in sick to work again and spent the morning walking around our neighborhood, looking at the life we'd built together with new eyes. The coffee shop where we'd had our first date. The park where we'd talked about buying a house someday. The grocery store where we'd argued about organic vegetables and laughed about our different approaches to meal planning. When had I stopped seeing these as shared memories and started seeing them as boring routine? At noon, I texted Rafa, "We need to talk." His response came immediately. "Finally, my place?" "No, somewhere public." We met at a downtown cafe, neutral territory where I couldn't be swayed by physical attraction or emotional manipulation. "So," he said, sliding into the booth across from me, "what's the verdict?" "I'm ending this." His expression shifted from confident to annoyed. "Because your husband threatened you?" "Because it was wrong. Because I'm married, and I took vows that meant something, even if I forgot that for a while." "Those are just words, Ianthe, legal contracts. What we have is real. What we have is an affair built on lies and my unhappiness. That's not a foundation for anything real. So you're choosing him. I'm choosing to try to save my marriage before I throw it away completely." Rafa leaned back, his charm replaced by cold calculation. "You know he'll never trust you again, right? He'll always be watching, always suspicious. Is that the life you want?" Maybe that's what I deserve." "And what about me? What am I supposed to do?" "Move on. Find someone who's actually available." He laughed bitterly. "You're making a mistake. He's never going to forgive you, and you're going to end up divorced anyway. The only difference is you'll have wasted months or years pretending to be happy." "Maybe, but that's my choice to make." I left him sitting in the cafe and drove home, feeling simultaneously relieved and terrified. I'd made my decision, but I had no idea if it was the right one. At exactly 6 o'clock, Caleb walked through the front door. He found me sitting at the kitchen table, My phone placed in front of me, with Rafa's number blocked and deleted. I ended it, I said without preamble. I told him it was over, blocked his number, and deleted him from social media. Caleb nodded once, his expression unreadable. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What did you expect? Celebration? Immediate forgiveness? I don't know. Something more than okay. He sat down across from me, and for the first time in weeks, I had his full attention. Ianthe, ending the affair is the bare minimum requirement for us to even consider working on our marriage. It's not an achievement worthy of praise, it's basic human decency. So what happens now? Now we see if you meant what you said, if you're truly committed to rebuilding our marriage, or if you're just scared of being alone. How long will it take for you to trust me again? I don't know. Maybe never, but I'm willing to try if you are. It wasn't the romantic reconciliation I'd been hoping for, but it was honest. And after weeks of lies and manipulation, honesty felt like a gift. I want to try, I said. Then we try. He reached across the table and took my hand, the first intentional physical contact we'd had in weeks. His touch was tentative, careful, like he was handling something fragile that might break again at any moment. Maybe that's exactly what he was doing. The marriage counseling lasted exactly 3 sessions. Dr. Rebecca Martinez was a no-nonsense therapist who specialized in infidelity recovery. She had kind eyes, but a direct manner that made it impossible to hide behind excuses or deflection. Ianthe, she said during our first session, I need you to take full responsibility for your choices without qualifying them with explanations about feeling neglected. Can you do that? Yes. I had an affair. I lied about it. I hurt Caleb. Good. Now, what specific actions are you taking to rebuild trust? I outlined my commitment to transparency, giving Caleb access to my phone and social media, checking in regularly when I was out, ending friendships that had enabled my deception. And Caleb, what do you need from Ianthe to feel secure in this marriage? My husband was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I don't know if anything she does will be enough. The person I married wouldn't have done what she did. So either I never really knew her, or she's fundamentally changed. Either way, I'm not sure how to trust someone who proved capable of such calculated deception. Dr. Martinez nodded. That's a fair assessment. Ianthe, how does it feel to hear that? Devastating, I admitted, but I understand it. By the 3rd session, the truth was undeniable. Caleb was going through the motions of reconciliation, but his heart wasn't in it. He answered Dr. Martinez's questions thoughtfully and treated me with careful politeness, but the spark between us, whatever had originally drawn us together, was gone. I think, he said during that final session, we're both trying to resurrect something that's already dead. I can't unknow what I know about Ianthe's capacity for deception, and she can't unfeel whatever drove her to seek validation outside our marriage. So you want a divorce? Dr. Martinez asked. I think it's the healthiest option for both of us. I wanted to argue, to fight for us, but deep down, I knew he was right. The marriage we'd had was over. We could build something new, but it would never be the same, and neither of us seemed willing to settle for a relationship built on the ashes of betrayal. Okay, I said quietly, if that's what you want. It's what we both need, Caleb corrected gently. The divorce proceedings were remarkably civilized. Caleb's documentation proved useful in establishing timelines and fault, but he didn't use it vindictively. We split our assets fairly, agreed on a reasonable alimony arrangement, and managed to avoid the kind of bitter court battles that destroy people's lives. 6 months after our final counseling session, Caleb and I signed divorce papers in a quiet downtown office. He remained calm, as always. Any regrets? He asked as we stepped into the sunlight. About the affair? Yes. About the divorce? I paused. This feels right. We both deserve better. I agree. On the courthouse steps, He kissed my forehead one last time. Gentle, final. Take care, Ianthe. You too, Caleb. I watched him disappear into the crowd, resisting the urge to chase him. Our marriage had become ruins held by fear, not love. 3 months later, I ran into Jessica at a coffee shop. New job, new city, fresh start. How's Caleb? She asked. Dating a teacher, I hear. I'm happy for him. And you? Single, in therapy, learning why I chased validation instead of real connection. Dr. Chen's words echoed. You mistook excitement for happiness, drama for passion. Real love is quieter. She was right. Caleb had offered stability, respect, security, qualities I'd dismissed as boring until they were gone. A year later, his wedding invitation arrived. I sent wine glasses we'd once admired, with a note wishing happiness. Their thank you card included Caleb's line, "Thank you for the gift and the lesson. Both were valuable." 5 years on, I'm in a healthy relationship built on honesty and partnership, not highs and lows. We've shared our pasts openly. I sometimes think of Caleb when I see long-married couples moving in comfortable sync. I hope he and Sarah have that quiet, lasting love I couldn't appreciate then. The affair destroyed our marriage, but it taught me the difference between being desired and being loved. An expensive lesson, learned too late to save us, but worth every hard-won insight.